The streets were alive with the chaos of Christmas Eve. The traffic roared, the street vendors shouted, and the air buzzed with the scent of roasted corn, suya, and freshly fried chin-chin. Yet amid the holiday cheer, a shadow of despair hung over Ao. Ao, a man in his late 30s, had been homeless for nearly 2 years. He wore a tattered jacket and mismatched slippers as he sat on a wooden bench near a busy shopping mall. Life had been cruel to him. Once a carpenter, his workshop burned down in a mysterious fire, and with no savings to rebuild, he had spiraled into poverty. As he watched people walk by, holding shopping bags filled with Christmas goodies, Ao sighed. The festive season meant little to him now. He picked up his old, battered cup, hoping for a few naira from passers-by. "Please, anything to help," he mumbled, his voice barely audible over the noise. Most ignored him, but a young girl pressed a crumpled 50 Nigerian nairas note into his hand. "Merry Christmas, sir," she said with a shy smile before her mother whisked her away. Ao muttered a thank you, his heart warming briefly. He placed the money in his pocket and leaned back, ready to settle in for another cold night on the bench. Just then, a sleek black SUV pulled up in front of the mall. The driver stepped out and opened the door, revealing a stunning young woman in a fitted red gown. Her high heels clicked against the pavement as she stepped out, her diamond earrings sparkling under the streetlights. This was Amaka, a billionaire heiress known across Lagos for her beauty and wealth. She was the CEO of her late father's tech company, and her every move was followed by the media. "Wait here," she instructed her driver. "I won't be long." Amaka walked toward the mall entrance, her head held high. But Ao noticed something she didn't: 2 suspicious-looking men loitering near the entrance. They exchanged glances and nodded toward Amaka. Ao's instincts kicked in. He had seen this kind of thing before. These men were planning something. He stood up, gripping his cup tightly. The men moved swiftly, following Amaka into the mall. Ao hesitated. He had no connection to this woman. She was rich and probably arrogant, like most wealthy people he had encountered. Still, something told him he couldn't just walk away. With a deep breath, Ao followed them. Inside the mall, Amaka strolled through the aisles, oblivious to the men tailing her. She paused to admire a display of gold bracelets, her mind already picturing which one she'd buy. The 2 men approached, their movements deliberate. One of them pretended to browse nearby, while the other moved closer to Amaka, reaching into his pocket. "Madam!" Ao called out, his voice loud and urgent. Amaka turned, startled. "What is it?" Before Ao could answer, the man closest to her lunged, attempting to grab her handbag. Amaka screamed, but Ao was faster. He swung his metal cup at the attacker, hitting him squarely on the arm. "Leave her alone!" Ao shouted. The second man charged at Ao, but Ao dodged and kicked him in the shin. The first man recovered and threw a punch, but Ao blocked it and shoved him into a shelf, sending items crashing to the floor. Security guards finally arrived, tackling the men to the ground. Amaka stood frozen, clutching her handbag as her heart raced. "Are you okay, madam?" Ao asked, panting. Amaka nodded slowly. Yes, I think so." The guards dragged the attackers away, and a small crowd gathered, murmuring about the drama that had just unfolded. "Who are you?" Amaka asked, looking at Ao with a mix of gratitude and suspicion. "Just someone who couldn't stand by and watch," he replied, brushing dust off his jacket. Her driver rushed in, his face pale. "Madam, are you hurt?" "I'm fine," Amaka said, still staring at Ao. "This man saved me." The driver glanced at Ao, his expression skeptical. "Thank you," he said grudgingly. Amaka turned to Ao. "What's your name?" "Ao," he said simply. "Well, Ao, you just saved me from losing my bag, and possibly worse." How can I thank you? Ao hesitated. You don't need to thank me, madam. I just did what anyone should do. Not everyone would risk their safety for a stranger, she said, her voice softening. Please, let me do something for you. Ao shrugged. I could use a meal, I guess. Amaka smiled. Come with me. Ao couldn't believe his luck as he sat in the back seat of Amaka's luxurious SUV. Her driver cast disapproving glances at him in the rearview mirror, but Ao ignored them. He focused on the smell of the car's leather seats and the warmth of the air conditioning, a stark contrast to the chilly streets. They arrived at a high-end restaurant, where Amaka led him inside. The waiters looked at Ao with thinly veiled disdain, but Amaka ignored their judgment. Order whatever you want, she said, handing him the menu. Ao's hands shook as he held the glossy menu. He struggled to understand the fancy dish names, so he pointed at a picture of jollof rice and chicken. I'll have the same, Amaka told the waiter. As they waited for their food, Amaka studied Ao. Despite his ragged appearance, there was something dignified about him. So, Ao, she began, how did you end up like this? Ao sighed. It's a long story. I have time, she said, leaning forward. He hesitated, then told her about the fire that destroyed his workshop, his failed attempts to find work, how he eventually ended up on the streets. That's terrible, Amaka said, her voice filled with genuine sympathy. You didn't deserve that. Life isn't fair, Ao replied with a bitter smile. But tonight, I feel lucky. Their food arrived, and Ao ate slowly, savoring every bite. Amaka watched a plan forming in her mind. You're a carpenter, right? She asked. Used to be, he said between mouthfuls. I need some custom furniture for my new office, she said. If I give you the job, can you handle it? Ao paused, unsure if he had heard her correctly. You'd trust me with that? You saved my life tonight, she said firmly. I think I can trust you. Tears welled up in Ao's eyes. Thank you, madam. You don't know what this means to me. Call me Amaka, she said, smiling. Over the next few weeks, Amaka helped Ao get back on his feet. She paid for a small workshop and bought him tools to restart his carpentry business. Word of mouth spread quickly about the homeless man who had saved a billionaire and was now crafting exquisite furniture. Orders poured in, and Ao's life transformed. On the next Christmas Eve, Ao sat in his modest but cozy apartment, surrounded by new friends and a table full of food. Amaka visited, bringing a beautifully wrapped gift. Merry Christmas, Ao, she said, handing him the package. He opened it to find a set of high-quality carving tools. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. No, she replied, smiling. Thank you for reminding me what Christmas is truly about, kindness and second chances. As they sat together, laughter and joy filled the room, a testament to how one act of bravery had changed both their lives forever. Ao smiled as he looked at Amaka. You've done more for me than I ever thought possible. I don't even know how to repay you. Amaka waved off his gratitude. You already have. You risked your life for me without expecting anything in return. It's not every day you meet someone who would do that. The room grew livelier as the other guests toasted to Ao's success. Ao had invited a few of the people he had met during his time on the streets, giving them warm meals and a place to celebrate the season. You know, Ao began, turning to Amaka, I've been thinking about something. What is it? She asked, her curious eyes meeting his. I want to do more, he said, his voice filled with determination. There are so many people out there who were like me, struggling, forgotten. If I could get another chance, why not them? Amaka nodded thoughtfully. That's a noble idea. What do you have in mind? I want to start a foundation, Ao explained. Something small at first, maybe a shelter where people can get food, a place to sleep, and maybe even learn a trade. Carpentry saved me, it could save others too. Amaka's face lit up with approval. That's a brilliant idea, Ao. And I'd like to help. Really? He asked, surprised. Yes, she said firmly. I can provide the funding to get it started. We'll call it the Second Chance Foundation. Ao blinked, his emotions overwhelming him. You do that for me? For us, Amaka corrected. This isn't just about you. It's about creating opportunities for people who need them. The room erupted in applause as Ao shared the news with the guests. Everyone cheered, clapping and raising their glasses to the idea. In the months that followed, the Second Chance Foundation became a reality. With Amaka's support, Ao rented a building in a busy part of Lagos and transformed it into a safe haven. They hired counselors, trainers, and volunteers to help those in need. Homeless men and women began flocking to the shelter, drawn by the promise of food, shelter, and a chance to learn skills that could change their lives. Some trained as carpenters, others as tailors or welders. Ao was hands-on, teaching carpentry classes and mentoring the younger ones. Amaka, on her part, used her influence to bring in donations and partnerships. She often visited the shelter, sitting with the beneficiaries, listening to their stories, and encouraging them. One evening, as the sun set over Lagos, Ao stood outside the shelter, watching the bustling activity within. Children laughed as they played in the courtyard, while adults worked diligently on their projects. Amaka joined him, holding 2 cups of steaming tea. She handed one to him. "You've built something incredible," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "I couldn't have done it without you," Ao replied, sipping his tea. "You gave it life," she said, smiling. "I just gave it wings." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the people whose lives had been transformed by their efforts. On the next Christmas Eve, the Second Chance Foundation held its first Christmas party. The shelter was decorated with twinkling lights, a large Christmas tree stood in the corner, and the air was filled with the aroma of jollof rice, fried chicken, and puff-puff. Ao stood at the center, addressing the crowd. "This time last year," he began, his voice steady, "I was sitting on a bench outside a mall, wondering where my next meal would come from. I had lost hope, thinking life had nothing more to offer me." He paused, his eyes scanning the room. "But then, an angel came into my life." He gestured toward Amaka, who blushed and looked down. "She didn't just help me, she believed in me. And because of her, we're all here today." The crowd cheered, clapping and shouting words of encouragement. "This foundation isn't just mine," Ao continued. "It's ours. It's a testament to what we can achieve when we come together, when we care for each other. So tonight, let's celebrate not just Christmas, but second chances." The applause was thunderous, and as the music began, people danced, ate, and shared their stories of transformation. Amaka found Ao sitting in a corner later, watching the festivities. She sat beside him. "Are you happy?" she asked. "I'm more than happy," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm fulfilled." She smiled. "Merry Christmas, Ao." "Merry Christmas, Amaka," he replied, his heart full of gratitude. And as they sat together, watching the lives they had touched, they both realized that sometimes, the greatest gifts are not wrapped in paper and bows but in acts of kindness and the courage to make a difference.